Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to Disney's Sorcerers Arena Epic Alliances core set. This is based on the mobile game, and it's a area. I want to say area control. It's a tile-based back and forth fighting game, basically. Maybe area control, I guess, might be the right word. It is 2 to 4 players. And it takes about 35 minutes. I don't ever trust that always. But basically what you are doing in this game is you are taking a team of, if you're playing by yourself, like if you're playing up to 2 players or 3 players, you're taking a team of 2 or 3 characters and you are combating them against each other across the board. During your turn, you'll play their actions to do attacks, or you'll do movement to get closer so your attacks can land. And essentially you're just trying to defeat the other players, getting skill points. Each character has their own deck of cards, their own unique abilities and strategies. It's also really fun about this is because as of this video, there are 4 expansions, each with 3 other characters. So that gives you an additional 12 characters to the 8 that are already in this set. So that is one of the things that prompted me to finally get into this and take a look at it, was because it seemed like they're actually going to continue making stuff for it. I always get worried with some of these IP games that they'll make one and be done. It's actually a neat little box here. This just piece pops off when you're done. Go ahead and toss it away if you don't want to use it. If we look on the back, it kind of gives us an idea. So you're going to take your different characters, move along these different hex tiles to do battle, Team Red versus Team Blue. You can play up to 4 players, with each player controlling 2 different characters, or 2 players, each controlling a team of 3. Our iconic characters, we're getting Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, Aladdin, Ariel from The Little Mermaid, Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog, Demona from Gargoyles, which I thought was an incredible pull, and then Sully from Monsters, Inc. And that's really cool, because again, a very different in some quote-unquote heroes versus villains. I guess technically they're heroes, but we get some people that are kind of villainish. So it gives you a good idea. It's pretty simple. Summon your characters, harness the powerful skills in your victory reports, overpower your foes. So that's pretty neat. And then the box is kind of neat. It looks like a big giant treasure chest. So if we pop this open, we take a look at what's inside. Get a big QR code and toss it off to the side. We're going to have a bunch of different tokens here, which we'll look at just a moment. We will have the board, which is a fairly decent sized quad fold board. So it's actually fairly big. And it has 3 different colored tiles on it. You have your kind of purplish ones, which are your main walk around battlefield. I don't know why that's not laying flat. That's not good. You have your blue tiles, which are your summoning or starting point tiles. And then you have gold tiles, which are your extra victory points, kind of like King of the Hill style. And then we have a bunch of other stuff in here as well. We're going to have a bunch of miniatures and their bases, and we'll pull them out in just a sec. We will have rings to keep track of hit points, as well as what team your characters are on. Each character will have a dual-sided card. Gives them different abilities, stats, some information. Some rule cards, reference cards, which actually just sit on there nicely. There is a deck spot here for the deck, but once you're done opening them all, you can sort each character out. So we can like grab Gaston's cards, you can put his there, throw Aladdin's cards here. You can have each character separated out in these things, and it looks like there's enough room in there to have them sleeved if you'd like. A lot of people like to sleeve. That's really nice that they made that for this type of game. Also, the fact is, each character only has 10 cards. And a bunch of them are all duplicates. So this is kind of neat. It's going to hold all these cards. A little bit maybe big for only 10 cards, but it's probably just the size you use. The downside is going to be is that if you buy expansions, I don't know what those boxes look like because I don't have one at this moment. But there's obviously no extra room in here for those. You can then drop your extra characters in here when you're done, but you'll have to take them out of the bases each and every time. So that's kind of another possible downside, is you have to keep dismantling stuff every time you play. Because you also need a spot for all your other tokens as well, which there is a little space under there for that. So you could always drop your characters down here and then put your tokens up here. However, you decide to do that. Speaking of tokens, we're going to take a quick look at some of these, and then we'll kind of hop in the rule book quick before we look at any of the cards. So we have each character has their has a dual-sided tracker, which keeps track of your turn orders, status effects. So just one side's red, one side's blue. Otherwise, they're the same exact effect. Shows their starting health and shows how many points they're worth when you knock them out. So someone like Sully, Gaston, who have higher hit points, gain you more points for knocking them out versus someone like Ariel or Gamona, who have a little bit less. The number below them is their initiative number. This is just how fast they can move. So your slower characters, like Sully or Dr. Facilier, are going to take their starting turn later than someone like, let's say, Aladdin, who moves pretty quick. This is kind of a neat little structure because it lets you assemble your team based on health and that. So you kind of decide you have too many big beefy characters, you're gonna go later. They do eventually get taken out. They're gonna cost you a lot more. So some different ideas there. And then the red side, just if you're playing the red player, since either player can play either side. We have victory point coins, 1s and 5s, which are double-sided, of course. And then we have double-sided status effects. Tough, shrunken, stealthy, strong. And what's neat about these is how they work. Just a quick show. So if I have Gamona here and she gains strong, that kind of lines up into that little slot there. And then if she gains another one, it goes in that slot. That's kind of how they stack so you can keep track of which one. And that's why if it flips over. That's a really neat way of kind of keeping track instead of putting tokens on like your character card. And I'm going to keep always looking back at that. That was a neat way of doing that. Then we have Immobilize, Taunt, bunch of Immobilize, and Magic Broom, which is basically the difference between the different colors is things that are active at the beginning of the turn versus things that have counters that get removed. We have Curses, Flustered, a couple of those, and we have some tokens that go on your card to show that they have counters on them. Alright, so that's the basic idea there. So what we want to look at next is just how to play. What is really interesting about this game is they break it down into 4 chapters. Chapter 1, which is like the basis of how you play the game. Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and then Chapter 4. So what each chapter does is it adds more rules to the game. So the first time you play, if you play a game in Chapter 1, it gives you limited characters to use. And it has you playing down. So it's going to literally tell you, here's how you win most victory points. Here's your setup. One player uses Mickey and Aladdin as a blue team. Other players use Gaston and Ariel as a red team. Things you will need, you'll need their characters, standees, 2 summer rings, and then the chapter 1 to 2 reference on side 1, what Gaston and Ariel needs. So it's kind of just telling you there kind of what you're going to need for your stuff. And then setting up the shared pieces. And that's telling you just to set them up in this particular order. So this is kind of giving you a little bit of a walkthrough. And then this is what your board will look like at the beginning of the game. Just about. So that's really neat. It's kind of just walking you through how to do all this. Setting up your summoner, snapping on your ring, putting on your health, your character in there, putting them in the starting spots, grabbing these specific tokens. And there's how your board will officially look. Your decks are shuffled, mixed together, and you're ready to go. So that's a really fun way to do it. And then when we jump, it explains all the chapters on how to play it, moving stuff, doing this, doing that. knock out what some of the different effects do, completing stuff. Then when you get to Chapter 2, it resets the game up again. But now everything highlighted in orange are new stuff. So now you're going to just select your own team. It's going to explain how to summon them, how to set stuff up there, how to do turn orders, doing the initiative numbers, drawing your open hand, what you can do. Different things you can do during your starting phase. It adds, during your turn, it adds some extra actions you can do, and a different way to win. Because it upped the victory points. Then step 3 just adds some more features in there. Lets you use your character cards now. So now you get to use these oversized cards. Adds some extra couple of rules there. And then Chapter 4 adds the way to upgrade your character card. Doing that. And then finally they have team play. So if you want to play 2v2, here's how you do that. So by the time you play through Chapter 4, you'll learn how to play the entire game using all the different mechanics of the game. So it's definitely a neat way to set up an instruction book, breaking down each step like that. You know, here's how you just play the basics of the game. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. The one thing I will immediately mention, though, I did not like, that I think they kind of glossed over, which I had to look and hunt down for this, to find this one little text that explains how this works. And now I can't even seem to find it again. But it explains how you play your cards. Yes, right here. So playing action cards. So every character. So if I'm playing Gaston and Aladdin, I mix their 2 decks together. And I draw cards and I get to play cards. I can play on my turn an action card. So it's playing action card corresponding to your active character. So if it's Aladdin's turn, I can only play Aladdin card, which inherently just makes sense, right? And if I'm playing Gaston, I can only play Gaston cards. But I don't like that they don't specifically just flat out say that. Like, you're breaking down all these other rules. I wish they would have said that. Aladdin player can only play, when it's Aladdin's turn, he can only play Aladdin cards. You know, I mean, it would have been kind of helpful. Alright, so I'm going to grab one of these quick. We're just going to kind of do a quick breakdown on what you get to do during your turns. And then we'll look at some of the cards and we'll break down some of that as well. But that way you have an idea of what the cards do when we go over them. So Chapter 1, so beginning of the game, check your status effects, your VP, basically see if anything's happening. Any character been KO'd, get to return to the arena, so you gotta keep coming back. So there's never player elimination. Draw a card, then on your turn, in either order, you can either move or attack. So cards will have one of 3 things. Either they'll have a green movement arrow, a red lightning bolt for action, or a combination of the 2, which is a card that can do both. So on your turn, you can move up to 2 spaces, or play 1 active character card, movement card. Or you can do an attack that's 2 basic damage, or play 1 action to do it. Then discard down to 6 cards and end your turn. So fairly simple there. Then if we jump to Chapter 2, the couple of things it just adds in there is, now with your standard movement, before you move your 2 spaces, you could opt to also discard a movement card to go 1 additional space. So this might be more helpful if, like, you have a card that has movement, but it's not going to be more than 2 and you just really need to move, you could discard it. And then action phase does the same thing. You can discard, do 2 damage and discard an attack with an attack icon to do an additional damage point. Just a way to utilize your cards as extra resources. Chapter 3, same thing. Everything's the same, except now that you're playing with your character cards in 3 and 4, you also have skill effects. Skill phase as well. So after you've done during your turn, you can do an action, a movement, or a skill. In any order. But the thing is, you have to complete one. So if you start a skill, you have to finish it before you can do your move or action. You can't move one space, do an attack, move 2 more spaces. Once you start moving, you have to move all your points, and then you're done. Discard down to your hand limit. So your hand limit changed from 6 cards to combined on whatever your characters say. And that's basically how that is. So let's take a look at some of the character cards here. I'm going to grab Maleficent. So on the back of the cards, we have this neat little Mickey Mouse symbol and skull symbol and crown symbol. And then we have our actual cards. Cards are going to have a bunch of different things on here. So we'll have a picture of the character, name of the card, what type it is. So this is an action. If it has a symbol there, it'll tell you what type it is. It could be an attack, which is a sword. It could have a little circle, which is a magic. I believe there's a third one, which I don't have on one of these cards. But it has a third symbol as well. Let's see if I can find it in the book here quick. Has an arrow, which is a status effect. So it tells you if it's a status, you could have action, movement, or move action cards. In the bottom corner, we have gears. These are used for later on. There are 4 different gears. These are basically used for upgrading your characters. As you play cards, they go in your discard pile. You can then spend them to upgrade your character to give them more abilities, which is really fun. I don't think it changes their health or anything like that. It just gives them an additional attack or skill to use. The other little symbol we have on there is right at the front of the word text is we have direct attacks and indirect attacks. So direct attacks have 2 arrows pointing towards each other, where indirect have them pointing away. Most attack cards and effects require the summoner to choose one or more characters to affect. These are direct attacks. Indirect ones specify each rival or adjacent character, each ally within a range. They're not picking a specific character, they're picking an area or a rough idea. Range is also measured any space 1 away from a character. So right next to a character is not ranged, 2 or more would be range. And the only reason this makes a difference is there's sometimes attacks that stop or defend if they're direct or indirect. So this one says Diablo's Flight. Indirect effect is choose a straight line of adjacent spaces from Maleficent to an edge of the area. Deal 2 damage to each rival in that line. So basically she can send and it shoots all the way out and it hits everyone in there. On the bottom it's going to show what number it is. So set number 1. We have 2 copies of that. So this is card number 2. She has Chain Lightning. Direct attack. Choose up to 2 rivals. Each of those rivals deals 1 damage to them, and then indirect damage 1 of each of your rivals adjacent to them. So it's not you can hit if they're all standing next to each other, you can do some extra damage. 2 copies of Overflowing Anger. Deal 3 damage to an adjacent rival. If Maleficent is on a crown space, deal 1 damage to each other rival adjacent to Maleficent. There, actually make that a little bit easier to see. They're a little bit dark there. Forest of Thorns. Range 2, so she can only hit from 2 spaces away. So this is why movement makes a big deal. Deal 1 damage to the rival. It gains 2 immobilized, or deal 1 damage to each of 2 rivals. So what Immobilize does is it'll have a little blue token put. This character cannot be moved with any card or effect or other effect. Anytime this character would be moved 1 or more spaces, instead they do not move. At the beginning of the turn, you just remove status counters. So at the beginning of their turn. Status effects are temporary and will be applied to a character. These effects will modify how a character takes its turn and interacts with other characters. Some status effects are positive, boosting only the ability of the character they are attached to, while other effects hinder that character. The first time a status effect is created, place a corresponding token next to them, then place a number of status counters equal to the number of cards. It's important to note the status effect tile itself is not considered a counter, only the counters placed on them. Character may have 2 or more different types of status effects. It says, one more status effect may choose the order of their result. If a status effect is removed from a character by a card or effect, and all the tiles are returned, return it to its base. Yeah, so that's basically how that works. Is they kind of sit on there and they mess you up. And at the start of your turn, you remove 1 card from each status effect on the tile. Last counter is removed. Remove the status effect. So turn order and stuff does kind of make a difference in there. But what will basically happen is if you put 2 immobilized counters on someone, when their turn comes up, they remove 1. They're still immobilized for another turn. But like she attacks first, and that person then comes up, they'll remove it then. If it's start of the next round, it goes all the way around, it'll still be the beginning of their next turn. So it doesn't really make a big of a difference. She has Dragon Form. Range 3, restore Maleficent's health up to her maximum, then deal damage equal to the number of restored health to a rival. She has 3 copies of Entrancing Approach. Move up to 3 spaces, then if Maleficent is on a crown space, move 1 character 1 space. So she's kind of neat. She does some damage, she has some movement. And that's what they're all going to have. We're going to take a look at her character card right away. And we'll just kind of do that. We'll do 1 character and that. So if I zoom out a bit. So they're going to have a couple of different things on here. Top corner here is same thing, their little icon said how much health, how many victory points are worth being knocked out. The 2 with the card is their hand size. So you add up the number of cards each character has, and that makes your hand size. So if I was playing a team of Ariel and Maleficent, I have a hand size of 4. So some characters will give you more or less. And that kind of just says what their standard attacks are. Plus, she has a skill, Forces of Evil. If Maleficent is on a crown space, draw a card. For each rival you have dealt damage to this turn, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. And on the other side is we have all our gears. This is going to show the breakdown of her deck. So she has 5 of the red ones, 2 pink ones, 1 and 2. So that'll be her 10 cards. To upgrade, she needs to discard 2 and 2. Now, if you'll notice, she does not have 2 blue cards in her deck. So you have to play another character that's going to have 2 blue cards. So it kind of, you have to balance your characters out as well when you're picking your 3 different characters. So again, like if we added Ariel to her, Ariel also needs 2 of these to upgrade, but she has 5 of that. So she can help Maleficent upgrade. But between the 2 of them, they only have 3 of that top color. So there's no way they could both upgrade unless they can somehow recycle a card from their discard pile. But that's why you'd have a 3rd person. Hopefully a 3rd person would have at least enough. If we added in our 3rd person is Dr. Facilier, he has 5, which would give us more than enough. On the other hand, if we added Sully in there, he only has 1, which would give us just enough to upgrade 2 of them. But since he also needs 2, you would never be able to upgrade all 3. So sometimes that's going to make a difference. Picking which characters go together on what you can do and can't do for upgrading as well. And maybe your strategy might be you're not worried about upgrading. There are also little keywords up here, which I have yet to see if they do anything, which says Villain and Kingdom. So if we flip her over, she has a new side. Now she has a Lingering Storm ability. Whenever you play her, discard a magic card during Maleficent's turn, deal 1 damage to up to 1 rival. Otherwise, her forces and everything else stay the same. She's pretty cool. Get some extra different stuff out of there. Our next character we're going to look at is Ariel. She has 2 Trident Strikes. Deal 2 damage to an adjacent rival. Reveal the top card of your deck if it is a magic or an attack card. Deal 1 damage to each of your rivals adjacent to that rival. Oh, I'm sorry, she has 3 of those. She also has Driving Waves, deal 3 damage to an adjacent rival. If the top card of your deck is an attack card, move that rival up to 2 spaces. You may not move that rival through other characters this way. Undercurrent, choose 1, remove all status effects from 1 character, or discard another action card to remove all status effects from 2 characters. And discarding can help you get them gears quicker too, so it's not always a terrible thing to discard. Collection, complete collection. Choose 1, draw 2 cards, or discard another action to draw 4 cards. Curative Bubbles. Ariel or an adjacent character recovers 4 health. So it's kind of neat to have healing characters in here. We have another one. Medicinal Melody. Choose 1. Each ally recovers 2 health, or discard another action to have each ally recover 3. So this could be very helpful if, like, maybe you have actions that are like Maleficent's Dragon Form. You need 3 spaces away, and you're too far away or you're too close. You can always discard one of her cards to help do that, or you could discard just for the fact of trying to upgrade. Then she has Courageous Spirit. Range 2, choose 1, deal 3 damage to a rival, or discard another action card to deal 3 damage to a rival, and summoner loses 1 crown or victory point. And then finally, she has Swift Seas, move up to 4 spaces. So she has a lot of discarding stuff, which is kind of interesting. Maleficent has a lot of stuff where she hits multiple people. Ariel has Hero, Princess, and Oceanic. Dig for Thingamabobs. Reveal the top card of your deck. Choose 1. If it's an Ariel card, draw it. Or discard it and damage 1, or direct damage 1 character recovers 1 health. So this would be someone next to them, or targeted. And, or put it back. You know, kind of whatever you want. Then if we do Upgrader, she says, Healing Tide. The first time any character recovers health on each of Ariel's turns, 1 player recovers 1 health. It's definitely neat. Yeah, kind of gives you a little bit of different type of character to play as. Alright, up next we have Dr. Facilier, who has 2 copies of Seal the Deal. Deal 2 damage to an adjacent rival. If this KOs that rival, gain 1 victory point, and their summoner chooses and banishes a card from their hand. Banishing means remove it from the game, so it doesn't even go to your discard pile. So banishing is bad because then you can't use them gears. But that's pretty nifty of him. Smooth Talker. After 1 status counter, any 1 status effect on any number of characters. If 3 or more characters have status effects on them, draw 2 cards. So if you're playing those 3 characters we just saw, Maleficent only had 1 card you could immobilize. Ariel didn't have anything for status, so he's not going to do as much helping them out. Friends on the other side. Each adjacent rival gains 2 cursed and then takes 1 damage for each different status effect on them. Curse says whenever a cursed counter is removed during the starting phase, this character is dealt 1 damage. So basically this is going to inflict 2 damage to someone. And then they're taking additional damage for every status effect. So if you can give them multiple status effects, they'll take more damage. 2 copies of Slimy Little Frog. Range 2, 1 rival gains Shrunken. Add 1 status counter to any number of status effects on that rival. Shrunken says, character standard attack is 1. Summoner cannot play any cards with attack symbols during this character's turn. They may still discard an attack to add 1. Bamboozled, range 2, 1 rival gains Flustered. You gain an additional action phase this turn. Flustered says, whenever a status counter is removed from Flustered during the starting phase, this character's summoner banishes a card from their hand. So Flustered is really mean. 2 copies of Parlor Tricks. 1 adjacent rival gains Flustered, and deal 1 damage to each of your rivals adjacent to that rival. And then finally, the Shadow Man. Move up to 2 spaces, and he gains 2 Stealthy. And Stealthy says, a rival summoner may only use direct attacks on this character if they first banish a card of their choice from their hand. indirect effects, so ones like the 2 white arrows going outwards, do not cause a summoner to banish cards. So, yeah, he's going to banish a bunch of cards from characters, punish them for having status effect. And then Stealthy is really nice, because if they want to attack them with a directly target them, they have to lose cards, so they really have to make it worth it. Which again, banish cards is removing them from the game. You can only do it so many times, otherwise you won't be able to upgrade. But again, you might not worry about upgrading. So he's a villain with Downtown. Tarot reading. Reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a magic card, a little swirl on there, gain additional action phase this turn. Otherwise, reveal a random card from your hand. That's kind of interesting. So, if it's not, then you have to show off your hand. Let your opponent know what you're doing. Mysterious Voodoo. At the beginning of your end phase on Dr. Facilier's turn, deal 1 damage to each adjacent rival that has at least 1 status effect. If 1 or more characters are KO'd this way, gain 1 victory point. Nice. So he piles up them, he discards status effects and damages them. That's pretty sweet. Alright, so our first bruiser is we're going to start off with Sully from Monsters, Inc., who has 2 copies of Buddy System. Deal 3 damage to an adjacent rival. If Sully is adjacent to 1 or more allies, deal 4 damage instead. So if you keep your guys next to him, you can do more damage. 2 copies of Top Starer, range 2. Deal 2 damage to a rival, they gain 2 immobilized. 2 copies of Wide Swipe, deal 2 damage to each adjacent rival. Charging, move up to 3 spaces. Sully may pass through rivals while moving. Deal 1 damage to each rival pass through this way. Ooh, so that's fun. Get them together and then run through them. 2 copies of Protector of Friends. He gains 1 taunt. Taunt says a character's rival may only choose characters with taunt when using direct effects. Other characters may still be affected by indirect. So this kind of is a status effect you apply on yourself. And then his last card is Defensive Maneuvers. Move up to 1 space and he gains Tough. Tough is a constant effect. Subtract 1 damage from any damage dealt to this character. Nice. So he gets, basically can take extra damage as well. Yeah, he's just kind of the bruiser. Very simple. Does damage, and that's it. You know, nothing too terribly special about what he's trying to do. But he does have some monstrous health, pardon the pun. He has 11 health. Hero and Downtown as well. Travel by doors. Sully has not moved this turn. Move Sully in any unoccupied space adjacent to an ally with 4 or fewer health. Sully gains 1 immobilized. So interesting. So you can get a free movement to him across the board to help protect somebody. Plus his ally card works better because he's next to him. But he can't move the next turn. And if we flip this over, his upgraded is Devoted Protector. Immediately after upgrading, Sully gains 1 taunt and 1 tough. And then Sully recovers 2 for each adjacent ally. Yeah, so if you could travel first and then upgrade, boom, and then he gains 2 extra health. At least unless you're next to another guy. You can only have 2 allies, so most you can gain is 4 health. But then Tough and Taunt, definitely nice. Alright, our 5th character is 3 copies of Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey. Deal 3 damage to an adjacent rival. If Sorcerer's Apprentice has at least 3 total status counters on status effects, Shooting Star has 3 range. So if he has 3 total status counters on his effects, whether it's his stuff or good stuff or bad stuff, he gets to do some extra range. Spellbinding Swirlpool. Deal 1 damage to each rival. If Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey has at least 3 total status counters on status effects, deal 2 damage to each rival instead. 2 copies of Magical Mob. Sorcerer's Apprentice gains 2 magic brooms. These are special tokens. Choose up to 1 status tokens. Choose up to one adjacent rival, deal 1 damage to that rival for each status counter on Sorcerer's Apprentice's Magical Broom. So yeah, he wants to keep putting counters on there to get those. So Magical Broom says, when a status counter is removed from Magic Broom during the starting phase, the character summoners looks at the top 2 cards of their deck and returns them in any order. Then they reveal the top card of their deck. If that is a magical card, this character gains 1 Magical Broom. Return the status counter removed to trigger the effect. So as long as he can keep playing, revealing cards that have that magic symbol, he can keep his magic brooms out indefinitely. So that's pretty neat. Because I think almost all his cards have that. Maleficent had a bunch. So you can see teaming him up with certain characters would be better than others. We have 2 copies of Studied Steps. Move up to 2 spaces and he gains 2 Magical Brooms. Quick Recall. Move up to 3 spaces. Return up to 1 Magical Broom card from your discard pile to your hand. And finally, Mystical Momentum. Move up to 2 spaces. He's going to get a move around the board a lot. Gains 2 Magical Brooms. If Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey has at least 3 total status counters, gain additional movement phase this turn. Nice. Alright, then we have his character card, which is still magical means discarding a magical card from your hand to give you 1 Magical Broom. So if you start getting too many, you can start discarding some of them. Then if we upgrade, we get Helping Hand. At the end of each phase on Sorcerer Apprentice's turn, if 2 or more status counters were placed on Magical Broom during that turn, draw a card. And almost all his cards automatically place 2, so you get 1. And his Hero and Kingdom. Alright, so we've had 2 magic users. We've had a healer, a discarder, a brute. Now we're going to get kind of like an interesting damage character. We have Aladdin. 3 copies of Street Rat Strike. Deal 3 damage to an adjacent rival. If that rival summoner has more cards in their hand than you, deal 4 damage instead. Disarm. Deal 2 damage to an adjacent rival. If that summoner's rival reveals their hand, and you choose up to 1 card matching their damaged rival, shuffled into its owner's deck. Carpet Swoop. Move up to 3 spaces, allowing me to move through rivals. Deal 1 damage to each rival passed through this way. Stunning Run. Deal 2 damage to up to 1 adjacent rival. That rival gains 2 immobilize. Move up to 1 space. So damage them and immobilize them. Blend into the Bazaar. Move 2 spaces. Gains 2 stealthy. Bold Thievery. Choose a rival adjacent to Aladdin. That rival summoner banishes the random card from their hand and you draw a card. Move 2 spaces. He's all about moving around the board. And then 2 copies of Dash Through the Crowd. Move up to 4 spaces, may pass through rivals. Each summoner who controls 1 or more rivals pass through this way randomly puts a card from their hand on top of their deck. So yeah, he's all about like limiting what your opponent has and getting around the board. Definitely an interesting strategy. It'd be interesting to see how these characters all compare to the expansion set stuff as well. So he has 2 skills. He has 1 Jump Ahead. Discard any movement card from your hand to give Aladdin 1 stealthy. And Thief's Curse. Reveal the top card of the rival summoner's deck. That rival character has a matching card. So adjacent to Aladdin, he recovers 1 health. So what's interesting with this means that if he decides to use his skill action, he has to do, if he does either one of these, he can do them in either order. He has to do the other one or he loses it. So he can't do Thief's Curse, then move somewhere else, then come back to 1 Jump Ahead. As soon as he does one, he has to do the other one or he forfeits it. And then he has Sleight of Hand. At the end of your action phase on Aladdin's turn, Aladdin has Stealthy. Choose an adjacent rival. That rival summoner banishes the top card of their deck and you draw a card. Interesting. So there's some very different effects there. Alright, then our last character is Gaston. You know, one fights like Gaston, plays cards like Gaston. He has 3 copies of Brawler. Oh, I just realized that. Deal 4 damage to an adjacent rival. If the rival is not adjacent to any other rivals, that summoner chooses and banishes a card from their hand. 1 copy of Fury. Deal 1 damage to an adjacent rival. You gain additional movement or action phase. 2 copies of Shove. Deal 3 damage to a rival. Move that rival up to 2 spaces. You may not move that rival through other characters this way. Sheer Bravado. Deal 4 damage to an adjacent rival. If Gaston and that rival are not adjacent to any other characters, deal 6 damage instead. 2 copies of Shrug It Off. Move any status effects your choice from Gaston, move up to 3 spaces, and finally he has Let's Dance. Move an adjacent character 1 space, and then move up to 2 spaces. Just pretty neat, just to move around and punch things. I just noticed at the beginning of this, so I have the little red bars at the top that show how many cards are in the deck. So we have 2 Shrug It Off, so it has 2 bars. And then if we go back to his first one, which had Brawler, he has 3 bars. So that's kind of neat. I didn't notice that before. It just immediately shows you what the cards are. Then we're going to look at his card. Oh, we have one more character that I apparently skipped over. Nice. We have Gaston, Villain in Kingdom. Both reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is an attack card, Gaston gains 1 strong, otherwise he takes 1 damage. Strong is the last status effect we haven't looked at, which says add 1 damage to any damage dealt by this character. So it's a little risk reward. And if we flip him over, he has Overwhelm. Whenever Gaston KOs a rival, recovers 3 health, then move Gaston up to 2 spaces and gain 1 crown. That's actually a pretty powerful set of abilities. Alright, then our actual last character that I missed earlier is Demona from Gargoyles. 2 copies of Particle Blasts. Range 2, deal 2 damage to a rival. If that rival is on a victory space, deal 3 damage instead. Rocket Launcher. Choose any 2 spaces within 2 range. Deal 2 damage to each character on in 1 space within the chosen space. So it's interesting here. It says choose any space and then deal 2 damage to each character. So that could potentially hurt your team as well, because it's doing indirect damage. Dark Lightning, range 2, deal 3 damage to up to 2 rivals and 2 damage to Demona. It's kind of a good last minute thing. 2 copies of Siete Spell, deal 1 damage to each adjacent character. You gain additional movement or action phase this turn. 2 copies of Wings of Flight, move to any unoccupied space. 2 steps ahead, move up to 2 spaces. Turn up to 1 other movement card from your discard pile to your hand. And then finally, singled out. Move an unoccupied space adjacent to exactly 1 character, deal 1 damage to that character. So she is all about range stuff. Yeah, she has some good movement too, but that's more or less just to kind of get her away so she can use her ranged attacks. So yeah, we have some melee brawlers with Gaston Sully. We have some ranged characters with like her. Some spellcasters. Definitely some interesting stuff. Deadly Force. If you have played 2 or more Demona cards this turn, remove all status effects from Demona, then she gains 2 strong, so she does extra damage. Nice. And then her other side is Dominique Destine. Whenever you discard your second card on Demona's turn, gain 2 crowns, and flip this card over. So that's kind of neat. That's the only one so far that has you actually revert back to your other form. And you might not be able to flip back over unless that's your strategy. You could maybe opt to flip her over a couple of times versus somebody else. She also has Villain, Downtown, and the only character with text so far. So those are all our different characters. We've seen our cards. We're going to look at the miniatures in just a moment here. I just got to pull them out of the bag. Yeah, there's definitely some other interesting characters that have been added. So when you first get these, they're all going to have like little a layer of protective stuff on top, which I have to figure out how to get off. So if I grab one of the characters, they're like that too. They're double-sided. You can see how they're kind of, hidden, and that's because I have this layer behind them. So I'm going to pause and try and take these off. Alright, so the final thing we want to look at are the acrylic miniatures, which they come, we kind of showed them a little bit earlier, they come with this foam or this film on there, which of course makes them look really crappy. So hopefully people realize you should remove them. So here I have Sully. Definitely looks really cool. They could just make cardboard standees. You definitely need, the only downside to the acrylic sometimes like this is that you can kind of see through them. Also you have to worry about like it getting scratched. But they definitely look cool. Each character has their own base, which will have their numbers on there, what set they're from, as well as their full health. So you kind of just the manhole cover. And then you put the rings on there to tell it color there. Now, here's what I thought was supposed to happen. When you put these rings on and then you have to change health, was, oh, it would just click on. No, you literally have to pick it up, move it to the next number, and snap it back down. So then he takes another hit of damage. I mean, obviously, probably start at 11 and go up. You have to go through, find, okay, you have 5 health now. You have to line them up on the bottom with the extra little notches in there. So personally, that's not the best idea for me. I would probably just go get some heart counters or some beads I have from another game. And I would just do damage on my character card. It has their health listed on there anyhow. And that way I don't have to keep picking these things up and moving these counters, because he sticks in there fairly well, but he also pops out fairly easy as well. And I'd just be worried I'd keep dropping them and scratching them. But let's take a look at each of the characters quick. So there we have Sully. We have good old Maleficent. Now this is what it looks like if you don't undo that base. So she has like little purple thorns and smoke around her. But yeah, I didn't undo the base on there. You can definitely tell the difference between them. You could leave it if you don't really mind, but I'm gonna take mine off. I just didn't want to do them for all because I wanted to show off the rest. So now, like, most of these characters I've just been picking up with their standees. So we have Aladdin. It's on like some desert sand. Like, I went to pick up Dr. Facilier, and he doesn't want to pick up. So that would be the other thing, is trying to move him around the board. He's not going to stick all the way in there. He pops out way too easy. But he has like little shadow demons on like a wooden floor. And then these pictures are actually a little bit more in line with what the video game artwork looks like. I think some of these characters are in here because they're the starting characters you get in that game too. There's Gaston on a wooden bar floor. They also need a little smoke below them, which is kind of supposed to be like they're like being summoned. Mickey Mouse there. We have Ariel. And I know she has the Oceanic trait, which I know one of the next sets has Oceanic characters as well. Stitch, Davy Jones. And finally we had Demona. So there's hers. I just kind of wanted to show this off. So I did peel like the bottom corner. But I didn't want to do all of these on camera. So like, look at how fantastically different that makes, from front to back, right? And you find another corner. And there we go. There's Demona. So now the only thing with this game, I would also have to say though, is I know they're releasing a bunch of other different characters, but don't expect there to be sets of characters. Just because we have Aladdin, don't expect Jasmine or Genie. Just because we have Sully, don't expect Mike. I think they're trying to do a very big collection of figures. I think the only other character that's so far been in the same set is they do have a Mrs. Potts coming out. Otherwise, there's a Mulan, like I said, Davy Jones, Stitch, Robin Hood, the animated one, the Fox. Trying to think of who all the other characters are. Because there's like 12 of them. Jack Skellington. I think Elsa is one of them. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different other characters. Maybe the Beast? I don't remember. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. They're kind of also adopting the same idea as Disney Villainous does, where you have a lot of well-known characters like Gaston, Aladdin, and Ariel, and they're using some lesser-known ones or not as popular, like Demona. Like nobody would have thought Demona, which is technically a Disney property. Dr. Facilier and Sully are not that they're unknown characters, but they're also not among the top popular ones. And that's a great way to do this games like this, is pick some of the popular characters people are going to go for, then pick like one weird one, like I said, the one sets Mulan, Robin Hood, and Mrs. Potts. Like Mulan's like your surefire. Oh, everyone knows who Mulan is. A lot of people know who Robin Hood is. And not that people don't know who Mrs. Potts is. It's just she's kind of like the oddball character. Like you probably wouldn't buy her for that, but since you could get her, that's a cool way to insert her in there. Alright, so that's what we have for Disney Sorcerers Arena. Hopefully I get some other of the expansions. We can go through all that cool stuff. And then maybe after I have some expansion, we'll show up like a storage solution once we figure that out. See you guys later. Bye.